theatricals, the room was returned to its original state, and Catherine was told to sit on a small, cold metal chair. She was then shown scenes of nature on the screen, quote, like a camera panning a forest, trees, and there's a deer, and moss and dirt and needles on the ground, and I'm getting this impression like, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. But she felt that her emotions were being manipulated and resisted, making them have to work harder. Looking back, she thought this was, quote, okay, because it gives me a little bit more control in the situation. And if they want me to listen to what they have to say, they need to treat me as an equal being and not use all these manipulative tricks on me. Other nature things appeared on the screen, she said, quote, like Grand Canyon. And like, okay, great, I've seen this on TV. It's going to the desert. It's going to be pyramids. I'm seeing more Egyptian ancient things like hieroglyphs and pictures of pharaohs and things. And I'm getting this thing, this was your life. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's kind of like a travelogue of my past lives. At that point, she became intrigued, quote, because I like the ancient Egyptians a lot, so this is cool if I was there. Then the being showed her a current picture of tomb paintings with the paint flaking off, but then it switched to her painting it. But in that incarnation, she was a man, and as she watched this scene, quote, this makes sense to me. This is not a trick. This is like useful information. This is not them pulling a bunch of shit like everything else. Catherine now felt that her insistence upon a more reciprocal exchange of information had been affirmed. I then asked Catherine to tell me more about this image of herself as a painter in the tomb of an Egyptian pyramid. In response to my questions, she provided a great deal of information that she seemed to know as the painter, who was called something like Akramenon. Some of this Catherine could have known from reading standard books about Egypt. Other details, such as the process of making the paint, which she seemed to know well and appears to be consistent with one textbook account, would not most likely have been known to her. She described the man's skin color, his clothing, just a wraparound loincloth, and headdress, which denoted the higher status of royal service when compared, for example, to a slave. What was striking at this juncture was the fact that the quality of Catherine's experience was entirely transpersonal. That is, she was not having a fantasy about the painter. Instead, she was Akramenon and could, quote, see things from totally his point of view instead of from me watching it. Catherine described the light in the room in which she was painting, close to the outside, a kind of maze passage to get to the tomb. What Akramenon was painting? The blue headdress of a pharaoh's wife who was wearing a white dress and was holding a little jar as an offering in an act of atonement to the god of the dead, Anubis, in order to be buried and obtain eternal life with the pharaoh. Another artist working on something down lower. Her pleasure in doing this work, quote, I could do much worse for myself. I could be having to cut out limestone blocks for the outside. And the rare blue stones from one of the conquered countries he ground to make the paint. She said that Akramenon learned his craft from an older painter when he was a boy. After completing the scene, quote, I've got to paint a bunch of dire warnings for grave robbers. His wife's name was Tibitzeret, and Catherine called the pharaoh, who she said was of the Middle Kingdom and of average importance, Amen-Ra. This is confusing, since Amun-Ra is the name of an important Egyptian deity, not a pharaoh, but added, to be perfectly honest, it didn't matter to me that much, as long as I had a secure position. I didn't really care. Later, reviewing my manuscript, Catherine wrote that it was difficult to remember the name of the pharaoh, as this, quote, was not central to what they were trying to show me. It wasn't the meaning or purpose of that life. I could be confusing several past lives even. She believes that the pharaoh changed his name and got rid of a lot of the gods. Perhaps she is referring here to Akhenaten, the New Kingdom pharaoh who abandoned polytheism and embraced monotheism. Catherine also reported many details regarding the appropriate size of various figures on the panel she was painting. Quote, regular people are small, royalty is bigger, and the gods are the biggest. And the complex problems of proportionality the painters faced as a result of the demotion of former gods by the pharaoh. After showing her the scene in Egypt, she said that one of the beings asked her, do you understand? What she realized then is that everything's connected,